So our movie Joseph, which was created and directed by Aurel Framont, opens up during one of the most brutal time periods in history. A little over 80 years ago, nearly 500,000 Spaniards had left Spain and crossed over the border to France when Barcelona fell to one of the most brutal dictators, Francisco Franco. On January 26, 1939, Franco took control over the capital of Barcelona and forced the Republican Spaniards to flee. France's stance, which was the neighboring country, was non-intervention, and they ignored the weapons that were being funneled directly into the country across their own borders. Eventually, they did open up their borders to the Republicans who were fleeing for their lives. They had to leave during the brutal cold of winter, and they were being bombarded by the nationalists and Italian planes. Germany also got involved, and these were the Nazi government, which had used the Spanish War as testing ground for their own terrorism before World War II. They bombarded innocent people, everything from women, children, and the elderly, while the Spanish were out fighting their own wars, and they had bombed the famous city of Guernica that was later on painted by Pablo Picasso. The nationalists under Franco's brutal regime had repressed the Republican Spaniards, and when they seized the new territory, they looked for those who were considered artists, teachers, unionists, or intellectuals, and they were executed. Anyone who remained in any cities knew that their only chance of survival was fleeing. The director, Aurel Framont, is a well-known illustrator himself, and he used Joseph de Bartoli's illustrations from his time in the internment camps of France and the camps of Germany to create the haunting, yet also artistically beautiful drawings of Joseph. They depicted how the Spaniards were treated in the camps. Joseph, who is the main person in our movie here, was befriended by Serge, and Serge was known as a gendarme or a soldier of the French. He was known to protect the other side of the fence from the Spaniards. The majority of the French soldiers are depicted by Joseph as brutal to the Spaniards, to the point that the Spaniards were treated less than animals. The soldiers then took on actual characteristic of animals in Joseph's drawings. You could see them. Some of the soldiers actually had a face that resembled a pig, and he did that on purpose to show how brutal that they were being treated. Initially, when the Spaniards arrived in France, they were forced to the beaches with just a barbed wire camp. They were there without water, and their only place to sleep was under the sand. They were actually forced to live there, and they were often dying of diseases during the first initial weeks until water was actually created through wells. The French kept them in these detainment camps, and it was under stricter rules of asylum than normal. Everyone was separated from their families, so the families were often lost. And in the movie, the most beautiful part of the story is when the friendship of Serge, the soldier, who still had to do his job, though, under the government, also started to look out for Joseph. He even brought him paper to record his illustrations, which is the whole part of this movie that you will be seeing is the illustrations of Joseph de Bartoli. The special friendship of Serge continues all the way through the movie and is even retold through Serge's eyes as he is nearing the end of his own life. Serge had hung on to one of Joseph's beloved drawings, and eventually he gave it to his grandson to retell the tales. The movie, though it is depicting a biographical account of Joseph de Bartoli, shares the drawings of the concentration camps that continued from the invasion of France and then Germany, and then it actually shares Serge's brilliant plan to help Joseph escape because he would have been killed by the Germans. Though the movie deals with very intense and brutal topics of history and life, this endearing friendship of opposite side creates an intrigue all throughout the movie. On a personal note of the movie Joseph, this movie has a special place in my heart as well. It was an enemy soldier who helped my own great uncle survive the Holocaust when the rest of his family did not survive. It is these rare glimpses on opposing sides in war that there are some individuals who took great risks in helping a stranger. These events and the movie remind us to never forget that even in the most brutal times within humanity, there are still extreme efforts or selfless acts of helping another human survive.